Welcome back to Documentalists. What if many of the wars America has fought weren't just about defending freedom or stopping threats, but about making money for a select few? That's the hard truth Major General Smedley Butler uncovered after decades in uniform. As one of the most decorated Marines in US history, he earned 2 Medals of Honor, then turned whistleblower, calling war a racket, a scam where profits soar for the powerful while soldiers and civilians pay the ultimate price. In this documentary, we'll trace Butler's remarkable journey, dive into his eye-opening 1935 book, War is a Racket, and connect it to later events where similar motives, oil, money and control, drove US actions. We'll highlight the companies that benefited and ask, if Butler saw this pattern nearly 100 years ago, why does it persist today? Over the next few minutes, let's explore this together and consider what it means for our world. Smedley Darlington Butler was born on July 30th, 1881 in Westchester, Pennsylvania, into a prominent Quaker family with deep roots in American politics. His father, Thomas S. Butler, served over 30 years in Congress and chaired the House Naval Affairs Committee, while his grandfather, Smedley Darlington, was also a congressman. Growing up, Butler attended the Haverford School, where he shone as an athlete, captain of the baseball team and quarterback of the football team, showing early signs of the leadership and determination that would define him. But Butler wasn't content with a quiet life. At just 16, against his family's wishes, he dropped out of school, lied about his age, and enlisted in the US Marine Corps during the Spanish-American War in 1898. Driven by a mix of patriotism and adventure, he shipped out to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, experiencing his first taste of combat. By 1899, in the Philippine-American War, he helped capture the town of Noveleta, proving his courage under fire. Then in 1900, during the Boxer Rebellion in China, Butler was wounded at the Battle of Tientsin, but fought on, earning a brevet promotion to captain, a rare honour for someone so young. These early campaigns earned him the nickname Old Gimlet Eye for his intense piercing stare and no-nonsense style. Over 34 years, Butler would rise through every commissioned rank to Major General, commanding key bases like Quantico and San Diego. He became the most decorated Marine of his era, with 16 medals in total. But as we'll see, these experiences also opened his eyes to the real reasons behind many US military actions. Looking back, Butler reflected on how military life kept him focused on orders and not questions. It wasn't until later that he started asking, who really benefits from these fights? From the late 1890s to the 1930s, the US engaged in a series of interventions known as the Banana Wars in Latin America. Officially, these were about maintaining stability and protecting American lives, but in reality, they often served to safeguard corporate profits and expand economic influence. Butler was at the forefront. In 1903, he deployed to Honduras to support American fruit companies facing unrest. From 1909 to 1912 in Nicaragua, he fought in key battles like Masaya and Coyotepe Hill, helping to stabilise the country for international banks, including the Brown Brothers banking house. In 1914, during the occupation of Veracruz, Mexico, Butler disguised himself as a civilian to gather intelligence, then led intense street fighting, earning his first Medal of Honor. This action protected oil interests, particularly for companies like Standard Oil. The pattern continued in 1915 with Haiti, where Butler captured Fort Riviera in brutal hand-to-hand combat, securing his second Medal of Honor. He then organised the Gendarmerie de Haiti, a local force that helped US banks such as National City Bank, a precursor to Citibank, collect revenues. Similar interventions occurred in Cuba for banking, the Dominican Republic for sugar plantations, and Honduras again for fruit giants like the United Fruit Company, which later became Chiquita Brands International. Butler later confessed in plain terms, and obviously in an American accent. I spent 33 years as a high-class muscleman for big business, for Wall Street and the bankers. In short, I was a racketeer, a gangster for capitalism. He detailed how he helped make Mexico safe for American oil interests, purified Nicaragua for the international banking house of Brown Brothers, and made Honduras right for the American fruit companies. These weren't abstract claims. These companies directly profited from the stability US troops enforced. These experiences made Butler question the true cost of protecting interests. As he put it, he might have given tips to Al Capone. The gangster operated in 3 districts, while Butler's racket spanned 3 continents. When World War I erupted, Butler served in France, commanding Camp Pontarlier in Brest. He didn't see frontline combat, but transformed a muddy, disease-ridden mess into a functional base, installing duckboats to combat flooding and improving conditions for thousands of troops. For this logistical feat, he received Distinguished Service Medals from both the Army and Navy, plus the French Order of the Black Star added to his impressive collection of honours. Back home after the war, Butler took a leave in 1924 to become Philadelphia's Director of Public Safety during Prohibition. He aggressively targeted corruption, raiding over 900 speakeasies and shaking up the police force with his no-holds-barred approach. But his tactics clashed with city officials, leading to his resignation after just 2 years. Tensions escalated in 1931 when Butler publicly criticised Italian dictator Benito Mussolini, recounting a story of Mussolini running over a child with his car and dismissing it as only one life. This led to a court-martial for insubordination, but public outcry and intervention from President Hoover resulted in a mild reprimand. The incident likely cost him the chance to become Marine Corps Commandant, and he retired on October 1st, 1931. These events marked a turning point. Butler began to see the military not as a noble calling, but as part of a larger system. As he later wrote, "Like all members of the military profession, I never had an original thought until I left the service." His growing doubts would soon explode into public activism.
Comrades, I want you to know that this gentleman who is going, gentleman and comrade, who is going to talk to you is the only man who has ever been presented with 2 Congressional Medals of Honor.
For 35 years, I've been a soldier. A Marine, that's the same thing. Yeah, I'll tell you why it is. Why everybody who's ever worn a uniform's the same. I'll tell you a story to illustrate it.
Retirement didn't slow Butler down, it unleashed him. He toured the US, giving hundreds of speeches against war and militarism, often donating the proceeds to help those hit hard by the Great Depression. He helped establish the Oregon State Police and ran unsuccessfully for the US Senate in Pennsylvania as a Republican in 1932, advocating for prohibition and veterans' rights. Butler became a champion for World War I veterans, visiting the Bonus Army encampment in Washington, D.C., where 43,000 former soldiers demanded early payment of their service bonuses amid economic hardship. He urged them to lobby peacefully, telling them, "You've got to get mad, but to channel it constructively." He recruited for the veterans of foreign wars while criticising the American Legion as sold out to big interests.
You fellas are so close to the woods that you can't see the trees, remember? Take it from me, This is the greatest demonstration of Americanism we've ever had. Pure Americanism. Willing to take this beating as you've taken it. Stand right steady. You keep every law. And why in the hell shouldn't you? Who in the hell has done all the bleeding for this country and for this law and this Constitution anyhow but you fellas?
His activism peaked with the business plot in 1933 to 1934. Butler testified before Congress that wealthy businessmen allegedly connected to J.P. Morgan Associates and backed by $3 million approached him to lead a fascist coup against President Franklin D. Roosevelt. The plan: rally 500,000 veterans to seize power and install a dictator-like figure such as Hugh S. Johnson. The Congressional Committee verified some details but called it unexecuted talk with no prosecutions. Media labelled it a hoax, but Butler stood firm, declaring, "My interest is maintaining a democracy. If you get these 500,000 soldiers advocating anything smelling of fascism, I'm going to get 500,000 more and lick the hell out of you." He spoke for anti-war groups and even voted for socialist Norman Thomas in 1936. These years transformed Butler from a military icon into a vocal critic, setting the stage for his most famous work.
I appeared before the Congressional Committee, the highest representation of the American people, under subpoena to tell what I knew of activities which I believe might lead to an attempt to set up a fascist dictatorship. The plan as outlined to me was to form an organization of veterans, to use as a bluff or as a club at least, to intimidate the government and break down our democratic institutions. The upshot of the whole thing was that I was supposed to lead an organization of 500,000 men, which would be able to take over the functions of government. I talked with an investigator for this committee who came to me with a subpoena on Sunday, November 18th. He told me they had unearthed evidence linking my name with several such veteran organizations. As it then seemed to me to be getting serious, I felt it was my duty to tell all I knew of such activities to this committee. My main interest in all this is to preserve our democratic institutions. I want to retain the right to vote, the right to speak freely, and the right to write. If we maintain these basic principles, our democracy is safe. No dictatorship can exist with suffrage, freedom of speech and press.
Butler's shift raises a key question. What happens when a lifelong soldier sees the system from the outside? Drawing from his speeches, Butler published War is a Racket in 1935, a concise 51-page book that packs a punch. Published by Round Table Press and later condensed in Reader's Digest, it argues that war is, quote, "the oldest, easily the most profitable, surely the most vicious, racket, where a small group profits hugely while the masses suffer." Using World War I as his main example, Butler breaks down the numbers. The war cost the US $52 billion but generated $16 billion in profits, creating 21,000 new millionaires. Companies like DuPont saw profits rise 950%, Bethlehem Steel by 700%, and airplane makers pocketed $1 billion for often useless planes. Even $635 million went to wooden ships that sank or rotted. Butler confesses his part. "I helped make Mexico and especially Tampico safe for American oil interests in 1914. I helped make Haiti and Cuba a decent place for the National City Bank boys. In China in 1927, I helped to see it that Standard Oil went on its way unmolested." He calls for solutions: conscript capital before soldiers, limiting everyone's wartime income to a soldier's $30 a month. Let only draft-age youth vote on war, restrict the military to true defence. He exposes propaganda. Beautiful ideals were painted. war to end wars, no one told them dollars and cents were the real reason. Visiting veteran hospitals with 50,000 living dead, Butler highlights the human toll. He ends defiantly, "To hell with war," urging science toward peace, not destruction. The book sold modestly, but influenced anti-war thinking, foreshadowing warnings about the military-industrial complex. Butler died on June 21, 1940, at the Naval Hospital in Philadelphia from gastrointestinal issues, possibly cancer. He was 58, married to Ethel Conway Peters since 1905 with 3 children, Ethel Peters Butler, Smedley Darlington Jr. and Thomas Richard. Buried in Oakland Cemetery, Pennsylvania, he left behind a legacy as the most decorated Marine in US history at the time. But his true impact was his transformation. From consummate imperialist, enforcing US interests abroad, to strident anti-imperialist, challenging the system. He voted socialist, spoke against fascism, and donated to causes for the unemployed. Butler's story shows how personal experience can lead to profound change, inspiring us to question official narratives about war and power. As we look at history since then, his warnings feel eerily relevant. Butler's core insight that wars and interventions are often driven by economic gain has played out repeatedly. Leaders who challenge US or Western control over resources face removal with excuses like democracy or security. Then access opens up for companies. Here's how it unfolded in key cases, including the US firms that profited. In 1953, Iran, Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh nationalised oil to benefit Iranians, cutting out foreign control. The US and UK backed a coup, Operation Ajax, to oust him and reinstall the Shah. Post-coup, a consortium gave 40% of Iran's oil to American companies, Standard Oil of New Jersey, later known as Exxon, Gulf Oil, now part of Chevron, Texaco, which merged into Chevron, and Mobil, now ExxonMobil. This secured cheap oil but led to decades of unrest, culminating in the 1979 revolution.
My fellow citizens, at this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger. On my orders, coalition forces have begun striking selected targets of military importance to undermine Saddam Hussein's ability to wage war. These are opening stages of what will be a broad and concerted campaign. More than 35 countries are giving crucial support, from the use of naval and air bases, to help with intelligence and logistics, to the deployment of combat units. Every nation in this coalition has chosen to bear the duty and share the honor of serving in our common defense.
In 2003 Iraq, the US invaded citing weapons of mass destruction, later proven false, and links to terrorism. Iraq holds massive oil reserves. After Saddam Hussein's fall, Halliburton, via its subsidiary KBR, formerly led by Vice President Dick Cheney, secured billions in no-bid contracts for oil infrastructure and logistics. ExxonMobil and Chevron later won bids for major fields like West Qurna and Majnoon, boosting their access amid the chaos that displaced millions. In 2011 Libya, Muammar Gaddafi had nationalised oil and resisted Western influence. NATO, with US leadership, intervened under a humanitarian banner, leading to his death and national fragmentation. US companies like ConocoPhillips and ExxonMobil, which had pre-existing stakes, positioned for renewed operations. European firms like Total, now Total Energies, and BP took early leads, but American interests expanded in the power vacuum despite ongoing instability. Most recently, as you all probably already know, in January 2026 Venezuela, US forces conducted a strike capturing President Nicolas Maduro and his wife, announcing temporary oversight. Venezuela has the world's largest proven oil reserves. Years of US sanctions and support for opposition figures like Juan Guaido set the stage. Chevron has maintained operations there despite restrictions, holding licenses for fields like Petrobscan. ExxonMobil and ConocoPhillips exited after 2007 nationalizations, but recently won $1.6 billion and $8.5 billion in arbitration claims respectively. With the change, these firms, along with others like Chevron, are eyeing expanded access, potentially reshaping the oil market but raising concerns about sovereignty and stability. In every instance, the playbook is similar. Economic pressure through sanctions, demonetization of leaders, intervention or coup, then resource deals for companies. Butler warned, the trouble with America is that when the dollar only earns 6% over here, then it gets restless and goes overseas. Then the flag follows the dollar and the soldiers follow the flag. Nearly a century later, the cycle continues, prompting us to ask, at what point do we break it? Butler believed true wars are only for defending our homes or the Bill of Rights. Everything else is just a racket. His journey from battlefield hero to outspoken critic challenges us to scrutinise today's headlines. Who profits from conflict, and are we willing to demand transparency? In a world of endless wars and corporate influence, Butler's voice reminds us that change starts with awareness. Thank you again for watching Documentalists and our War is a Racket documentary. Has Butler's warning changed how you view current events? Subscribe for more stories that uncover hidden histories and share your thoughts in the comments, including what you'd like to see next. We'll see you next time.